So Game Pass is really starting to heat up this spring with more games this March. We'll also take an early look at April titles. I'm Sonny, your host at Xbox Central. We're going to kick this off with Guilty Gear Strive, the ultimate 2D, 3D hybrid over-the-top combat title filled with a high-octane soundtrack that is sure to keep your heart pumping and your feet dancing to every single hit. Guilty Gear Strive is a game since its release back in 2021 has received an overwhelmingly amount of positive user reviews for a good reason. This action-packed fighting title offers gorgeous 2D, 3D graphics mixed with this super fluid combat animations and impactful visuals, mixed with a starting roster of over 15 unique characters, each with their own story. The game is sure to keep you hooked for hours of thrilling gameplay. Guilty Gear Strive is now available to play on Game Pass on the cloud, consoles, and PC. Now, our next two games are ones, if you guys are a fan of sci-fi horror titles, there's really not much like it on the market. Now, they have been available with EA Play right now on consoles and PC, but today they are joining the cloud, which is why we're talking about these games today. But for those who don't know about these titles, both Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 are a pair of survival horror third-person games that are going to leave you in suspense and potentially terrified with their gameplay. Now, Dead Space 2 arrived over 10 years ago back in 2011, and it puts you in the shoes of Isaac Clarke, an engineer who's awakened from a coma years later after the events of Dead Space 1, only now he's on a mysterious space station, confused and not really sure what's going on. While the game's over a decade old now, and it definitely shows its age a bit, it's still a classic horror title that at times can be very gory and very brutal with its gameplay, while also taking the time to have you solving physics-based puzzles and exploring some pretty dark environments. This is a good one, even years later. Then we have a Dead Space 3. This is the third in the trilogy, and while this released back in 2013, it definitely holds up much better today in modern gaming. Somewhat less scary than the previous two games, here you are going to play as Isaac again, only now you're tasked with destroying the source of these creatures and their outbreak. Despite not having as much horror as previous titles, what you get here is a journey across an icy planet that you'll explore, as this title has more emphasis on its action-packed gory combat, very robust crafting system, and it has you hunting for upgraded gear and taking on a series of missions, side missions, and a thrilling campaign that can be played completely solo or fully online with a buddy. And if you happen to go the multiplayer route, the second player plays as Sergeant John Carver, and it opens up even more dialogue and intrigue in the story with a second player that you wouldn't see with the single player campaign. So it's definitely encouraged to try this out with a buddy for that extra story goodness. Overall, the Dead Space games have been somewhat of hidden gems over the years. Both Dead Space 2 and 3 will be available for the first time on the cloud on March 9th and are ready to play right now via consoles and PC. So Valheim is finally making its way onto consoles for Game Pass. This is a title that really took the whole gaming world by storm when it released back in 2021. This is a survival title set in Vikings era and lore. It came offering a refreshingly new twist on the survival genre that ever since its release has really attracted players all around the world, even gamers who aren't into survival games. A procedurally generated world filled with mythical creatures from Norse mythology. You'll be on the hunt to gather resources to upgrade and build your settlement, your gear, and even boats as you explore the lands. Now, in somewhat of a tier system, when you defeat one of the bosses in the game, new land opens up to explore. Then you head into that new land and you gather resources and build up your arsenal again to take on the new boss of that new land you just discovered. It's a game that can be played completely solo, or it could even be more enjoyable with a group of friends. That's the way I've experienced it, and it was just a blast. This is a survival game with no annoying drinking or eating as well to stay alive. It's just really a game about pure gameplay, crafting, and exploring at its heart, and it's why it's one of my favorite survival games of the past few years. This finally will hit consoles on Game Pass on March 14th. Now, speaking of one of my favorite games, Sid Meier's Civilization 6 is officially headed to Game Pass, and if you've gotten to know me over time on this channel, I've said before that I'm not usually a fan of strategy titles, but the Civilization franchise has been one of those exceptions. It's a classic 4X style title that puts you in charge of a nation that will set its course starting from practically the Stone Age to modern day technology, and you're completely in the driver's seat of your civilization. As the game progresses, you'll decide on what technology to research, whether that's culture based to advance your society's music, art, literature, and win the game that way, or maybe you just want to go to war and conquer your fellow neighbors, so you base your research on war technologies as you try to take them over, as they are just trying their best to advance their own cultures. It's a sandbox through and through where you can go any route you wish. You can be a peaceful nation and simply expand without war, which I typically do, or you could just fight your way through and take on espionage to rule over your fellow nations. The Civ games over the years for me are one of those that you can just kind of sit back, relax, throw on some music, and play a game completely at your pace, set the rules that you want, and each playthrough is going to be procedurally generated. That means the replayability here is literally limitless, as every time I've booted up a new game, it's completely different experience from my other playthroughs. I have hundreds of hours invested in this one, so even if you're not a big fan of strategy games, I still highly encourage a Civilization 6. It's become one of the best strategy games on the market right now, and one that's going to be one of the best on Game Pass as it hits on March 16th across cloud, consoles, and PC. No Kuni 2 has you on a journey playing as King Evan, set on an ambitious quest to unite the world and set up a whole new kingdom where there's nothing but peace and no evil. Now, number 2 in the series is largely separate, and it takes place much later of the events of the first game, so you don't need to play that one to get in this one. Now, this action RPG open world title will put you on a series of missions and exploring to get that goal of bringing peace to all the land, but what's also unique about this game is there's an element of literally you building that land from scratch by placing buildings and assigning job roles to citizens. So you'll literally be building this new land brick by brick. So when you're out there defeating the evils of the land, you'll be gathering resources to bring them back to keep this loop going, mixed with an intriguing story and a colorful cast of characters, plus some pretty gorgeous cel-shaded graphics. This is a title that kinda has it all. With about 40 hours to complete the game, it's an RPG that I do highly recommend, and I'm glad it's making its way onto Game Pass this March 21st. Expect to see it on consoles and PC. Another big Game Pass game joining later this month is MLB The Show 23, and this year new modes are joining the party as you follow the story of some MLB legends, but highlights to gameplay are what really stand out. There's going to be new fielding attributes that make the game more realistic. The pitcher and batter dynamics get a big gameplay revamp. There's going to be completely new animations, over 5,000 to be exact. Also debuting on MLB The Show 23 is a host of new in-game visual updates as well. MLB The Show 23 should make its debut on Game Pass on March 28th. Another title coming this March is the game Infinite Guitars. This is a completely new rhythm-based RPG that has us saving the universe, well, with guitars. And while electrifying guitar solos will be humanity's last hope, the game is filled with an original soundtrack, some awesome turn-based RPG action, and some really fun rhythm games. This looks promising as it arrives on Game Pass on March 30th. Then we have Way to the Woods. This also makes its debut release as you play as a deer and fawn lost in an unknown world. You must now journey to find your way back home with nothing but the power of light to see in the darkness. This will be hitting sometime in March. Alright, with that we have a series of games coming this April, and we have a newly announced Game Pass games coming this 2023. We'll start this off with Minecraft Legends coming April 18th, where the world is being invaded by the evil piglins. It's going to be your job to stop them full force. The game's gameplay so far has really shaped up to be action-packed and wild, but it's also featuring some pretty robust multiplayer action that I just didn't expect to see with this one. This will be hitting consoles, PC, and the cloud next month. Then we have a Metroidvania I've been looking forward to all year in The Last Case of Benedict Fox. Here you'll be unleashing your inner detective as you delve deeper into a universe of dark rituals and serial killings. You'll be exploring the memories of the dead to uncover clues and secrets leading up to their death as you try to solve the very last case. Our next game this April is going to be Homestead Arcana, and you play as a witch who builds her own farm, sowing and farming to help you reach your most powerful spells in a bid to heal the corrupted land that surrounds you. You'll be exploring and battling and resource gathering. Those will be your main goals, as this is a new twist on farm sims that hits sometime next month. We also got a completely newly announced Game Pass game coming this 2023 in Cities Skylines 2. This game will now expand more, offering a deeper simulation as you build your city from scratch, as the game gets even more realistic this time around. So far we don't have a date for this sandbox city builder, and there's no gameplay just yet, but this should be a good one when it releases later onto Game Pass this year. Now, another new game announced for Game Pass is Lamplighters League. This is a brand new adventure strategy title from Paradox Interactive that on first impressions definitely gives me a bit of a more XCOM style gameplay, only in this one you'll be sneaking, stealing, and shooting your way out of some nefarious situations as your goal is to outwit your enemies at every single turn. Based in 1930s, you'll be recruiting your own team with their own unique abilities as you control these crazy characters to stop a twisted evil trying to reshape the world in their evil image. This looks good. I'm excited for this one. No release date just yet. This will be a day one Game Pass release. Finally, guys, we have the games leaving Game Pass this March. I do want to highlight both games here that I just need to highlight: Goat Simulator and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. If you guys haven't played them, definitely give them a shot. Both are amazing games, and if you want to buy them, you have that discount as well. One of them was in my top 50 to play, so sad to see them go on March 15th. If you guys want a list of the best 50 50 games to play on Game Pass. Check out the video on the screen.